Hey guys, it's Kevin again, finally back for another movie review. And I know, guys, it's been a while. It has been a long while since I did another movie review. I think the last one I did was for The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which was like a week ago, and I do apologize for that. Just things have been really crazy in terms of college and stuff, but that's actually been one of the advantages of not as many movies coming out in the past couple weeks, because there hasn't been like a ton of stuff for me to review. That being said, there are still 3 or 4 films I need to review, so I'm just going to get it done very quickly. And like this one, which I saw about a week ago, and that of course is Green Book. And what Green Book is essentially about is we center on the character of Tony Lip. He is basically a bouncer, and he is basically recruited to drive around this piano player who was recommended by him. And this piano player is very different from him. He is much more well-established. He's much more classy. And through this drive, what starts off as these two being very much polar opposites and becoming a mild annoyance quickly starts to have an impact on both of their lives, and that's really all I'm going to say. So, Green Book overall, I was interested in this movie, to say the least. I wouldn't say I was hyped for it, because I wasn't. I mean, the trailer wasn't, like, amazing. The trailer wasn't like, oh, I need to see this now. However, the hype that this movie was getting, the acclaim was getting, was constant. It was one of those movies I was constantly hearing about. I was looking forward to checking it out. I was really hoping it would be something great. I was hoping that it would be a very good film, and I'm happy to say that Green Book is way better than I ever could have imagined. This is an incredible film that not only, I think, is a really great showcase for these two actors, but also tells a very insightful story in a way that I am very surprised by. But we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And look, this is a no-brainer here. The cast is incredible here. Everyone really does a great job. However, it very much is a two-man show. I mean, Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala very much do carry this movie, but I want to talk about them on their own. They both do incredible jobs. Viggo Mortensen, he has this character down so well. He completely transformed himself into Tony Lip. He's got that very thick Italian accent, but he also has the mannerisms, I think, down very well, too. You can see this is someone who he's very Italian. He comes from a very specific background, and I really love seeing that, and especially once we get to Mahershala Ali, who is also incredible here, and seeing the different personalities, the way that they have first clashed, but eventually start to connect, it's just so great. It's one of the best pairings, I think, of the entire year. These two give amazing performances. I really loved what we got from both of their characters here, and I don't really need to say too much more. I mean, you know these two are amazing. They absolutely deserve all the buzz they've been getting, and I'm sure you will definitely see them come Oscar time, because they both were incredible here. As far as the rest of the cast, I don't really have a ton to say, because they're not really in the movie all that much. It's really Viggo and Mahershala Ali's movie. I will say, though, Linda Cardellini, not in the movie, more than I expected, but still not in the movie a lot. But for what she had, I thought she actually did a really good job. I don't think that she's, like, amazing or anything, but I actually really did like what she did here as Tony Lip's wife. I did think she played a very good role, and I did enjoy their relationship in the film. However, what I really want to get into is the directing and the writing, because this is one of those films that I should not have liked. In fact, the biggest film that I can compare this to is one that I really can't stand at all, and that's Driving Miss Daisy. This film does feel very similar to that. However, what Peter Farrelly, what he very well understood is that this is not a movie about social issues. This is not a movie about just people bickering. Like, this is a very fun, enjoyable movie, but it also is very insightful, and I think it really does ride the line between those two tones. There are points in this movie where it is just flat out hilarious, and I was loving every single second of it, but then there are also those more intimate and quiet moments, and there's some very emotional moments in the movie, and they both feel incredibly well earned. The movie really does take its time in getting to both of those moments, especially the emotional moments. I think it hits very hard and it does a very good job with. And I was very impressed with his directing. I can't believe that someone who did something like Dumb and Dumber went on to do a movie like this. This is definitely not something I would expect, but it really does show how versatile of a director he really is. And I really do want to see him do more stuff like this movie after, because he definitely knows what he's doing. He has a real talent, and I can't wait to see what else he does directing wise, because like I said before, I love it when directors do something that is a little bit more out of their wheelhouse, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. I love what he did here. I think this film is very well crafted in terms of directing, and I really did love it a lot. In terms of writing, however, this film also, I think, is very well done. Now, the film, it has 3 different writers, but you really would not be able to tell, because, to me, this is one of the best screenplays of the entire year, especially when it comes to these characters, because, again, I was really worried the movie was going to be like Driving Miss Daisy, but the biggest difference that I can make between the two is that Driving Miss Daisy is a film about social issues. It's about racism. It's about the mistreatment of, people. It's about the rich versus the poor, and that's really what that film's about. And it doesn't really focus much on its characters. If it did, I can't really tell you anything about them, because all I really remember is this really annoying old woman and this very sweet driver played by Morgan Freeman. That's really all I can tell you about those characters. Green Book, on the other hand, is a character study. It is very much about these 2 men, and that's something this film understood much more. It understands it's not about the social issues, and I'll get to that in a little bit, but going to the 2 characters, I mean, they are so well written here. From something as simple as the different types of food that they eat. I mean, Tony Lip is someone who, he loves fast food. He wants to get all the fast food he possibly can. He loves the grease. He loves eating burgers. He loves fries. And this is something that Mahershala kind of detests. He hates that idea of fast food. He wants something a lot more elegant and something a lot more classy. And you really do see that, and again, it's little things like that that just really show how well written these 2 characters are. But then when you get into their characters, they're not necessarily who you may expect them to be, because yes, Tony Lip is very much someone who is from an Italian background, but you also understand that he's very inexperienced with this type of culture. It's something that he knew was out there. He knew of the mistreatment that Mahershala is going through, but he didn't really see it firsthand. It's just something he kind of heard in passing, and you see the impact that this has on him. And when contrasted with Mahershala, who is someone who, at the surface, looks like he's very well established. I mean, he's a piano player. He's always nicely dressed in a suit. He's going to these very high-class establishment restaurants, and you think that he's doing really great. But then you start to peel back the layers, and you realize that he's kind of alone, and you realize that he's not nearly as well established as he seemed to be, and I really did love getting into that and going to those social issues. It ties in very well to his character. Again, the movie is not about them. It's part of the movie. It's part of what Ali is going through, but it's not about them. It's just something that he has to deal with in his life, and it's not heavy-handed. It doesn't it doesn't beat you over the head with these issues. It shows that, yes, this is something that was very prevalent in this time. It shows this is something that he unfortunately did have to go through, but it's not trying to be specifically about those issues, and I think that's something this film does very well overall. But again, I have to reiterate that not only is this film very well written, but it also is one of the most enjoyable films I have seen all year. I mean, there is a great subplot in this movie where Viggo Mortensen, he's writing letters to Linda Cardellini, trying to tell him about what he's doing, and he's terrible. He doesn't know how to write shit, and there's a great subplot where, Mahershala pulls him aside, and he starts writing these letters for him, and It's great. What ends up happening there, it's really great. I really love the subplot that was going on in the film. Also, any stuff involving, like, Tony's obsession with fast food, I just thought was just so funny, and there's a lot of fun moments like that. You really just love seeing these two interact, and that's something that Driving Miss Daisy didn't understand. I know, I keep comparing those movies, but they're very similar in the sense that this is what I wanted that movie to be. This is very similar to what the movie should have been. It's not about the issues. It's not about two characters bickering back and forth. That's a part of it. But the movie understands that it's really about the impact that these two have on each other and the stark contrast and how similar but also dissimilar they are. And I think that's something that the movie very well does understand, and that's why it can be a lot of fun sometimes, especially getting into, the things that might annoy Mahershala. It's very well handled. There's a lot of great scenes here, especially this one recurring gag with fried chicken. I don't want to say too much more about it, but it is amazing. I loved what they did there, and it is among one of the funniest recurring gags I think I've seen all year. I really love what they did there. I thought it factored very well into the movie, and I thought it was very well done overall. But again, going back to those social issues, another thing this film very well understands is the position that Mahershala is very much in, because he's not someone who is necessarily, discriminated in the way you would expect him to. He is discriminated against, but it's not in a very vocal manner. It's in a way where people don't really understand what's actually happening to him and how rejected he often feels and how this kind of makes him feel very conflicted, because Tony at points is also discriminating against him, but it's not in the way that you might expect it to be. And especially once we get to the back half of the film, there's one scene especially that is just abhorrent. I mean, the fact that it actually happened and the fact that this actually happened to, this character, the fact that he actually had to go through this sort of thing, it's just disgraceful, but it's probably very similar to how things were back then, and the film really does not try to sugarcoat that, and I'm very surprised that I'm hearing people say, oh, this film plays it very safe, because I really don't think it does. I think it just tells a very accurate story, depiction of what actually happened back then, and I thought they did a good job with that overall here. Now, something that some people may take issue with this film is that, yes, it can be predictable. There are definitely points where I expected certain things to happen. That being said, I wanted it to happen. The way the movie ends, sure, you can kind of guess the way things are going to happen, but I thought it was a very effective ending. I thought it really did bring the characters full circle in a really nice way, and I really did love the way it was done. It is definitely, not everything is wrapped up in a nice little bow. There are some loose ends that aren't completely tied up. And I thought it was definitely a wise choice to do that. There's one thing that Mahershala is going through that they very well could have wrapped up. And they very well could have, just wrapped up in a nice little bow. But I thought it actually made sense for them not to do that because, like I said, the film is very realistic in that sense. It's showing what that character actually did. And I thought it was very, very well handled. I really did love the ending here. Also, I will say the cinematography in this movie is gorgeous. There are so many amazing shots here of just them driving along, the various places that they get to. The weather actually does play a pretty big part in this movie, not just because of the crying scene in the rain, which, yes, that definitely is an incredible scene, but weather does play a big part in this movie, and I actually thought there were some really beautiful shots here. Really did love the cinematography here. The score as well is really great. A lot of great, late 60s music and things like that, and also Don Shirley's piano playing is fantastic. I really love that as well. The editing to this film, I will admit, the first maybe 20 or 30 minutes, it was a little hard to get into. I enjoyed the setup to Tony's backstory. I understood why it was there, but I just thought it dragged on just a little bit for me. I think they could have maybe maybe they could have trimmed a little bit, but really other than that, once the actual story started and once we got into the road trip, I was pretty much locked in from there, and the film really did fly by in that sense. It definitely does not feel 2.5 hours, and I thought it was very well paced here. In terms of flaws with this movie, other than the runtime, which I said, I will say there is a subplot going on in this movie with Linda Cardellini, which I already alluded to, and while I enjoyed that subplot and thought it was definitely a lot of fun, I would have liked to get just a little bit more there. I think we could have had a little bit more with Linda Cardellini. Maybe she could have played a little bit more of an active role in this movie. I understand you want to keep the focus on Don and Tony. I totally do get that, but I just wish we could have maybe just had a little bit more of her. But really, other than that, there really isn't too much to complain about here. This is a very well done film that does a good job of addressing issues we've seen before, but it understands that this is a film about these two characters and the struggles that they're going through, the hardships that they have, the things that they've had to endure, and really the long-lasting impact that they have on each other. And it's a very positive film, but it also is a very insightful film. It has two incredible performances from both Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala. They will definitely be getting Oscar nods for sure. There's some really fun scenes in here. There's some really emotional scenes. It just overall is the definition of a really great, enjoyable movie that I really loved way more than I expected to. Green Book is truly one of the best of the entire year, and I am definitely going to give Green Book overall an A. But overall, guys, in my review of Green Book, let me know what you guys saw this movie. All there's your thoughts. And like I said, please see this movie if you haven't. It really is not doing too well, but I really do encourage all of you to see this. I think this is one that you're definitely going to hear about come Oscar time. A lot of people are saying it's going to win Best Picture. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I do think that it's going to get a lot of stuff in terms of what it does get nominated for. But that's in my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.